Hey guys, I'm back. You may have noticed I did not upload videos last weekend. It's because I was traveling for work. I've been all over the country, and I had neither the time nor the energy to upload book reviews. I was just exhausted, so I apologize for missing last weekend, but I'm back. I have more book reviews for you, so let's get started. Today I want to talk about an interesting book. It's one of the early examples of the Gothic novel, and I've talked a little bit about Gothic novels on this channel before. I think it's a great genre. There's a lot of fruitful, especially if you're into like science fiction, horror, fantasy type genre literature, the Gothic novel was a starting place for a lot of that. And this is an early one. It's called The Monk by Matthew Gregory Lewis. He was very famous for writing this book and otherwise wrote basically nothing of interest, but this was a sensational novel in its day. It was written and published in 1796, and it's basically the story of a monk in an abbey in Madrid in Spain who yields to temptation and is seduced into evil, which is a familiar story. I'm not going to say the plot is new. I'm not going to say the plot is unique. I'm not going to say the plot is complicated, but it's got a lot of appealing elements to it. It's got this great hypocrisy angle of the people who are supposed to be the best in society, the people who are supposed to be men of God and pure and virtuous, falling into the deepest evil. And it's got a lot of my favorite kind of Gothic novel tropes. I've always said I love, in films in particular, I love religious horror. I love films like The Exorcist or The Omen. I don't know quite why, but those films always really speak to me, and I find them really spooky. And I think there's something to do with the pomp and circumstance surrounding religion, particularly Catholicism, that lends itself to that. You have all these great old castles, monasteries, churches with this kind of looming architecture with lots of hidden nooks and crannies, shadows everywhere. You've got, in Catholicism, you've got the censer and the incense and smoke, and you've got robes, and you've got crazy costumes and all this ceremony, and it kind of lends itself to the spooky atmosphere, which I think is great. This book has a lot of that. It's also got to deal with the devil. A lot of Gothic novels do not actually have anything supernatural in them. They hint at them, but then it turns out to be a mundane explanation. This one actually has supernatural elements in it, including a deal with the devil, which is, of course, the Faust myth. It goes back for a very long time and is a very popular trope, but I never get tired of it. I always like it. This edition I have here is a Dover thrift edition, and I've talked about Dover publications before, but their thrift editions are kind of awesome. When I went to grad school, I had a little bookstore near me that I used to go to all the time that stocked a bunch of Dover thrift editions, and I got a lot of classics that way. I bought King Solomon's Mines, Heart of Darkness, and this one, and it's like, what does it retail for? This is $3.50. I think I might have gotten it cheaper than that, but a lot of these books are $1, $2, $3 for these pretty good, well-made classics. You know, they're not gonna last forever. They're paperbacks. They're not leather bound or anything. But if you're on a budget and you want to read a lot of classics, Dover Publications thrift editions is a really great way to go, I think. And I've gotten a lot of my favorite books that way and learned about them. Because it lets you just try anything, you know? It's like going to the library. Just try to read anything. It's going to cost you $1 or $2, you know? Why not try and read it? It's not going to cost you $30 like a new hardcover will, okay? So back to the story. The monk was very influential and inspired a lot of other Gothic writers. You see a lot of the same tropes occurring in other famous writers of the genre. You see a lot more religious horror coming out, and it's actually pretty graphic. For 1796, you can see why it caused a stir. It's got pretty graphic portrayal of everything that the monk does to forsake his vows and fall into sin. It must have been pretty shocking at the time, and in some respects, it's still kind of shocking today. I'm surprised that something published over 200 years ago would still have this kind of impact. So if you're a fan of the Gothic novel, if you're a fan of religious horror, if you like Faust that deals with the devils, this is a classic in all those genres. You can really learn a lot by reading The Monk by Matthew Gregory Lewis. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will be back tomorrow with more book reviews. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. Leave me comments in the comment page. I've been Logan Albright, and it's been nice talking to you. Have a good one.